Alrighty guys, welcome back to another little video where today we're going to be going over two different PCs and trying to help you guys decide whether or not you should buy a new i3 or an old i7. So today we're going to be looking at the Dell G5 5000 gaming desktop and the Dell Optiplex 990. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright, I just want to say thank you very much for coming by, like, comment, subscribe, yada yada, all that fun stuff. And today we're going to be getting into kind of a fun topic and a fun video. Primarily because I'm going to be comparing two PCs that are kind of in different leagues. Now, the reason I wanted to compare these two PCs is because they both have 4-core, 8-threaded CPUs, and they can both be found on the used market right now relatively cheaply. Now, the Dell G5 5000 is a brand new current generation PC that typically comes with 8GB of RAM, the i3-10100, and like a 1TB hard drive. There is definitely modifications that you need to do to one of these computers to get it actually daily driver usable. But they are still very good value for money if you're trying to get into a new, more modern desktop. But then on the other side, we have got the Sandy Bridge i7-2600 Dell Optiplex 990. Now, these computers kind of come and go in waves. Sometimes you can find a lot of them for a very good price, and sometimes they're sitting a little bit overpriced. When looking at an i7-2600 Dell Optiplex mini tower, you should be looking to spend anywhere between $100 and about $130. Anything above $130, I would say, is overpriced. But with that being said, these computers can oftentimes be found closer to that $100 price point. And with these computers being paired with an i7-2600, they are amazing value for money. Yes, these things are typically dirty, old, and beat up, but with a little bit of cosmetic work and a little bit of modifications, you can turn these things into genuinely amazing daily driver computers. Now, yes, the two computers that we're comparing right now are literally 10 years apart in age. But the thing is, they both share very similar capabilities. Both of them with 4-core 8-threaded CPUs, and both of them having 16 gigs of RAM. Now, to make this comparison as fair as possible, I decided to put a GTX 780 in both PCs, or the same GTX 780 in both PCs. So it'll be an apples-to-apples comparison when it comes to actual graphics horsepower. So primarily you're able to look at the CPU and RAM performance compared to what the GPU would be the limiting factor. Even though we're going to get into GPUs being the limiting factor in a few minutes here. Okay. But first, let's just talk about some of the creature comforts and daily driver capabilities of both of these PCs. Because being the fact that these are Dell computers, they oftentimes come with a lot of creature comforts. And for the Dell G5 5000, there is no lack of creature comforts. It has a native M.2 NVMe support, PCIe Gen 3. It has built-in Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5. It has quite a few high-speed USB 3 ports, a couple of low-speed USB 2 ports, gigabit Ethernet, as well as 7.1 surround sound Realtek audio with actual drivers that work with Windows to allow you to set your own audio profiles. Meaning that you can have different audio profiles for different games if you'd like, and if you'd like to actually take the time to set all that stuff up. Now, I'm a major audiophile, so having something like that in a built-in desktop computer, I genuinely appreciate. The Dell G5 also has additional little features, such as USB Type-C on the front panel, as well as having a whole bunch of other standard ports on the front panel. So now that we looked at the good one when it comes to creature comforts, let's look at the lackluster one for creature comforts. The Dell Optiplex 990. It has USB front panel, it's got front panel audio, it's got USB rear panel, it's got built-in gigabit Ethernet, built-in audio, nothing fancy though. And that's about it. this thing does not come decked out to the moon with the capabilities of a gaming PC. This thing is, admittingly so, kind of lackluster when it comes to daily driver creature comforts. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't actually upgrade the PC to have those kind of creature comforts. If you wanted to add in USB-C or if you wanted to add in additional USB connectivity or USB 3, you definitely could. I don't know about NVMe M.2 support. I haven't tested that yet, but that's definitely something I could look into if you guys wanted me to. Also, you can add in your own Wi-Fi card into this computer without much issue. The only real problem that you come into when it comes to actually expanding this PC is you don't have a lot of expansion slots. Actually, that goes hand in hand with both computers. But now when it comes to just daily usability, when it comes to how quick it feels, how good it feels, they feel about the same in my opinion. Yes, the Dell G5 5000 does feel a little bit snappier, it does move a little bit quicker, your load times are a little bit faster, but it's not drastic. I should also add that I'm actually using a SATA 3 2.5-inch SSD for both PCs. Yes, the Dell G5 does feel a little bit faster, but it's not drastically faster to the point where I was uncomfortable using the Dell Optiplex. And when it comes to daily drivability of the Dell Optiplex, it really doesn't feel slow, at least in my opinion. Okay, but moving past just the daily usability, how are some of the benchmarks? Well, to no one's surprise, the i3-10100 beats the i7-2600 in pretty much every test. When it comes to synthetic tests, it really shouldn't surprise anybody that the Dell Optiplex 990 is far inferior to the Dell G5 5000, primarily because of 10 years of optimization. Yes, they both have 4 cores and 8 threads, but you've also got to remember how much better the IPC is on 10th gen than it is on 2nd gen. And when it comes to memory speed, of course the DDR4 is going to be faster than DDR3. But synthetic benchmarks really don't matter all that much unless you're trying to break records for synthetic benchmarks. What do the real gaming results actually look like? Well, being the fact they both have GTX 780s, which is kind of a limiting factor in both of these PCs, they both performed quite admirably. So the first game that I tested was Far Cry 3, and I tested it at 2560 by 1080p, aka 1080p ultra-wide, and I could not tell you the difference between these two PCs. They both dipped down into about the 55-ish FPS mark at ultra-wide at ultra settings, but that was about it, and they both dipped in the same spot at the same time. So I really couldn't give you a definitive answer of whether or not one is better than the other. So moving on to a little bit of a newer game, I tested out The Division 1. Now The Division 1, yes, is still an older title, but it is still relatively demanding, and there yet again was not a huge difference. The i3-10100 did run the game a little bit smoother, but not enough to where I was uncomfortable playing on the i7-2600. So the next game that I tested was the game that actually had the biggest difference, and that was CSGO. The i3-10100 had an average FPS of 268, with a maximum FPS of 310. And so the i7-2600 had an average FPS of 210, with a maximum FPS of 158. So its maximum FPS didn't even reach the average of the i3-10100. But would that actually matter a whole heck of a lot? Unless you have an ultra high refresh rate monitor, you really wouldn't notice the difference between these two PCs playing in that particular title. But if you are going to be running something like a 144Hz monitor or even a 240Hz monitor, having something newer might be more of a luxury. But on both PCs, it was still a very competitive experience. And now the final game that I decided to test was something that was really going to hammer both CPUs pretty hard, and that is Escape from Tarkov. Now, Escape from Tarkov I played at 1080p, lowest settings across the board, and both PCs were able to handle the game relatively well. Now, both PCs did suffer from a little bit of micro stutter. Now, it wasn't enough to make me uncomfortable when it came to playing this game, because I played this game on both PCs for about 6 hours each, and I did not really feel a whole heck of a lot of a difference. Yes, the i3-10100 was a little bit smoother, but not smooth enough to the point where it didn't micro stutter at all. But with that being said, I don't know what the long-term or longevity of the i7-2600 machine is going to be when it comes to that game. That game is still in alpha, so they might make it better performance optimized, or it might become worse performance optimized, kind of like what happened with Cyberpunk 2077. So, with that being said, let's actually take a step back and talk about which PC you should buy if you're actually in the market to buy one of these two PCs. And the answer to that is the Dell Precision T3500. Wait, that wasn't one of the options. Never mind. What PC should you buy? Either one. The fact of the matter is, these are two PCs that go to two different groups of people. If you want something brand new that is going to have better longevity and have a better upgrade path, the i3-10100 in the G5 5000 is going to perform very, very well for you, and you'll be able to upgrade it to something like an i5-10400 or an i7-10700 later down the line when you actually feel inclined to. This machine also has current generation DDR4 memory instead of past generation DDR3, as well as the fact that this PC does have a promising future ahead of it, where they will most likely release more powerful power supplies that can be slotted into this rig. But as of right now, you're kind of limited to the 500 watt power supply that comes in most of these PCs. And if you're unfortunate and you get one that has the 380 watt PSU in it, then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle, because you'll have to drop a decent chunk of money for one of those 500 watt units if you want to use a more powerful graphics card. And when it comes to actual graphics card compatibility, it's night and day. The Dell Optiplex 990, I can fit whatever GPU I could ever want inside of that machine. The fact of the matter is, my GTX 980 Ti WindForce Extreme, which is a massive graphics card. Like, we're talking as large as some of the bigger RTX 2080 Ti's. Not quite as big as the RTX 3090s, but with that being said, those graphics cards are like the size of Pennsylvania, but I digress. The Dell Optiplex 990, you can fit literally any graphics card you could want into a machine like that, simply because when you remove the drive cage out of that PC, you have a massive area. But on the other side, the Dell 5000, the Dell G5 5000, does not have that same kind of room. I kid you not, I was only able to use a reference PCB GTX 780. I was not even able to use my MSI Lightning card. I wasn't able to use any of my R9 290 cards. I don't even know if the R9 290 works properly in this system, but I was much more limited on the selection of GPU that I could actually go with. And with that being said, that's kind of where I feel like there's a bigger limiting factor for the Dell G5 5000. Now, there are issues with the Dell G5 5000 that can be easily fixed. The Dell Optiplex 990 doesn't have as many issues. Its biggest issue is that you need to remove the drive cage, but once you remove the drive cage out of a PC like this, it's pretty much smooth sailing for whatever kind of modifications you want to do and for whatever kind of build you would want to do inside of one of these computers. Not to mention the fact that the Dell Optiplex 990 has cheaper parts, easier to get your hands on said parts, and when it comes to something like a power supply, you don't need to deal with a proprietary power supply. The Dell Optiplex 990, 910, yeah, I believe it's the Dell Optiplex 990 and the Dell Optiplex 910s. don't need any kind of power supply adapter to actually make them work properly, but then the 9020s will, but you can still use a standard ATX power supply inside those computers. You would just need to actually get the proper adapter to adapt the 24-pin power supply to the, I want to say 10-pin motherboard, but I don't remember exactly what that whole thing entails. I've never personally used one, but I know those adapters are readily available and easy to come by. And with that being said, the Dell Optiplex 990 is the worst case scenario here, because it is the second generation of Intel CPUs. You could buy a third generation or a fourth generation Dell Optiplex and have the same kind of compatibility and usability of a standard Dell Optiplex, but you'd have much better IPC than just second generation. Because let's not forget about the fact that the i5 4750, I believe it's called, I'll put it on screen, that CPU will almost perform as well in games as the i7 2600 does, and that CPU only has 4 cores and 4 threads instead of the 4 cores and 8 threads. So between these two standard desktop platform PCs, they're both kind of for a different crowd. The G5 for a new, and the 990 for the old. So it really does come down to personal preference, where your budget lies, and what you really are looking to get out of your PC. If you want something for today and now, and you don't want to spend an arm and a leg, the 990 is a perfect PC. If you want something that's going to be upgradable and more available in the long term, the Dell G5 5000 is your go. The Dell G5 5000 is going to be your best option. And with that being said, I think I've been talking long enough for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.